One question for you, and you don't have to answer it in the comment section or on email. Just something for you to think about. Did you ever ignore red flags when it came to your parents while you were growing up? Did you ever have this feeling that something wasn't right with your parents? Or with other close relatives, or with a school teacher? I'm talking about while you were little, while you were in your pre-teens or in your early teens. Did you ever sense that something wasn't right with the people close to you, but though the convenience, you ignored it because the thought that something was really off was too scary? If that happened, well, you can't blame yourself, because that is what children and young teens do. It's convenient, and often they do it without them being aware of it. But just one thing you need to understand. When your body senses that something isn't right, your brain develops a pattern of defense against it. So even if you, as a spirited being, gets along with it, your body does not. Your body does not get along with it. The body does not lie. We can fool ourselves to some extent, but we can never fool the body. The body won't take it. The reason I'm saying this is because this is the root that keeps many trapped in abusive relationships or in dangerous situations. Look, there's nothing wrong with a parent or a caretaker having a hierarchical attitude towards a child. That's practical when you're dealing with a child. To some extent, okay? But when the child turns into a teen, you need to become more flexible, because the human being is not completely dependent anymore. And when someone has matured into an adult, you need to relate to them on a different level. That's reality. So, you cannot have static expectations towards anyone, especially not your children. Yet in the world there is this belief that having firm expectations and defending those expectations with consequences is the way to go. Is the way to establish stability. So this stronghold, this thinking of firm boundaries, I'm challenging it in this video. Why am I challenging it? It is because this belief in firm expectations, it's a delusion. Because just as I explained before in this video, we're only 3 minutes in the video now. Expectations must line up with reality and must be flexible, or else they're not practical. But often people hold firmly onto expectations that they don't want to examine, and that is delusional. I already explained the difference between a fantasy and a delusion before. A fantasy is when you want to do something, but you haven't considered the full implication of what you want to do. You may want to travel from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, to Rabat, Morocco, and you know that in Spain you have to transfer your card into a fare. You know all of that. But you haven't calculated the cost of gasoline. Because gasoline in the Netherlands may be cheap, but in France it's quite expensive. And in France there are some roads you need to pay to drive on those roads. You probably were not aware of that. So your plan to travel to Morocco by car, it is realistic. You can do it and you have the tools to do it, but your plan is a fantasy because it doesn't include the high cost of France. And you will spend some days in France if you go to Morocco with the car from the Netherlands. So a fantasy is the result of a miscalculation or lack of information. It doesn't mean that what you want to do or what you think of is undoable. It just means that there needs some construction. I'm saying it just means that your plan or your expectation must face some construction work before it's completely practical. That's a fantasy. A delusion is when someone is so desperate for relief that they don't want to hear anything except that they are getting a relief. And they want their relief on their terms. So they have their terms, which are their expectations, or if you can call them boundaries, that they're holding on to, and they don't want to hear anything else. And everyone else just has to find a way to deal with whatever they want. Now, the second thing I just described is delusional. So why did I ask you in the beginning of this video whether you ever felt as if something was off with your parents, but you ignored it? It is because many people learn to ignore their natural instincts just to fit in to the social world. And this is a practical thing, but it will not benefit you in the long run. Look, if you were a kid and you wanted to run down the road and your parents said, not going to happen, they were firm about it, it's because if you run down the road, a car may hit you. Or if your parents were stern on don't talk to strangers, it is because your parents know that some strangers have bad intentions with children. They couldn't explain that to you because you were just a kid, so they expect you to trust them. Okay, that's understandable. But if your parents had an attitude that you had to speak to them in a very high manner so that they feel at ease, now that goes too far. Because now they're using you to relieve themselves. They're using you as a drug. And that goes way too far. And they would defend themselves with you live in my house, blah, blah, blah. They would use their physical advantage, that they are stronger and older than you, and their authority, that they're paying rent, to trick you into thinking that you are obliged to relieve them. And that's wrong. That is very wrong. But a lot of folks grow up thinking it's alright for an authority figure to use you as a drug. So what happens to those children when they are grown? When they form intimate relationships, this is what they expect. They expect that it's okay to use the other as a drug. So when they are used as a drug by their intimate partner, they don't sense the danger. They don't sense that something's off. Why not? Because that's how they were trained by their parents. That's how they were trained by the environment. Because anytime they challenge their parents about this, because their inner alarm as human being goes off, anytime their alarm went off and they challenged their parents, they either were smacked down or they were quote unquote disciplined, or better said harassed by other family members telling them, don't speak like that to your father, don't speak like that to your mother, have some respect. So that's how a lot of folks are conditioned into ignoring their natural instincts. So I'm asking you, did you ever sense that something wasn't right with your parents, but you ignored it out of convenience? Don't blame yourself. I'm not pointing a finger at you, but admit it to yourself. I don't expect you to write any story in the comment section. This is something for you. Just think about it. If you did this when you were quite young, you didn't know any better. So I'm not telling you to blame yourself. Absolutely don't blame yourself. However, you need to face it. Because when someone is delusional, they are dangerous. Straight up. There is a difference between having a delusional expectation and being delusional. It's a difference. You can have a delusional expectation because, well, that's just that's the only thing you know. And being delusional is really not wanting to look into things, but at the same time firmly insisting on what you want, no matter what. If your parents had delusional expectations that they didn't know any better, okay, that's the case. But if they were delusional, you need to face that. Because a lot of folks, they transfer patterns that they were conditioned into onto others. And they're not aware that they're doing it, but nevertheless, they are doing it. The reason, again, I'm asking you to ask this question, whether your parents were delusional, is because this is a root question you should ask yourself. If your parents did good things for you, they did good things, you acknowledge that. You don't have a black and white thinking. But if they were delusional, because they were firm about their expectations and they never want to examine their expectations, that's a red flag. Your parents should be the first people you are honest about towards yourself when something isn't right with them. If you can't admit that things were wrong with your parents, that means you can't relate in a healthy manner to anyone else on the earth. If even your parents, you can't admit that something was off with them, then how can you seriously examine other people? You can't. Now look, in a best case scenario, your parents really didn't know any better, but they did whatever they could on your behalf. If that's the case, rejoice. If that's not the case, then rejoice because you're in Christ now, you're alive, and forgive your parents, but if they are reprobate, you keep them at a distance, because Satan can use them against you. Don't have this worldly attitude that you can't question your parents, that you can't reflect on them. There are people that are frightened and terrified of questioning their parents. And in some cases, those people are grown men and grown women with their own families, and their parents are dead. Some of those parents are dead for more than a decade. But you tell them to examine their parents, they get terrified if something bad's about to happen. If, for example, if your father was out of line and he was sick on leave all the time, if he has been dead for a while now, you question him cannot endanger you because he can't stand up from the grave, come and smack you, demand you to show him respect. He can't do that because he's gone. But a lot of folks haven't processed the anomalies they encountered, and that's why they are still anxious. And this anxiety grants demons access to you. This anxiety enables demons to get a hold on you. Some people eventually become demon-possessed by this. So, were your parents, or maybe not just your parents, you should do this to everyone. Were they firm for the right reasons? Or were they delusional? Again, just because someone has expectations they're firm about, or we call that boundaries, doesn't mean they are right. Pedophiles have boundaries. They want to do whatever they want to do, put their cock in whomever they want to put it in, and you just have to shut up and take it, or else they turn on you. A burglar that breaks into your house also has boundaries. He just wants to rob your house, and if you say anything, he will harm you or potentially kill you. Someone that robs a store also has boundaries. That's why he has a gun, or she has a gun, so that you will hand over the money, or else something bad happens. So he doesn't want to hear anything. He has a firm expectation, and you have to deal with it. So just because someone has firm expectations doesn't mean they are right. For example, someone told me that his parents used to tell him the teacher is always right. So then that individual told me that he told his parents, so if the teacher begins to smack me or touch me in inappropriate ways, that means he's right also. And the parents of that guy, when he was small, they remained quiet because he realized that their attitude was off. Not many people have this courage. Look, this is not a therapy session. I'm recording this video to alert you. That's why I ask this question, not just about your parents, but about everyone. Especially people that are quite firm about their expectations. Are they firm for the right reasons, or are they delusional? That's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.